Atlanta heat in July was unforgiving, especially on Cascade Road SW. I stood at the kitchen island, staring at the condensation dripping down the glass pitcher of sweet tea. I was 40 years old. I was an African American woman who had built a life, a beautiful home in one of Atlanta's most historic neighborhoods. And yet, I felt entirely invisible inside it. The ceiling fan above me spun with a lazy, rhythmic clicking sound, doing nothing to cut the humidity that had seeped through the screen door. Through the window, the sprawling oak trees of southwest Atlanta cast long, deceptive shadows over the manicured lawn I paid a landscaping crew to maintain every Tuesday. Dear viewers, please let us know where you are watching from and which region or country you are in. Please like this video, watch it until the end, and subscribe to our channel. Your support is very important to us. Thank you so much. This house, with its wraparound porch and brick facade, was supposed to be my sanctuary. Instead, it had become a velvet-lined prison. You put too much sugar in this, Maya. The voice sliced through the heavy air, sharp and unyielding. I did not have to turn around to see the sneer on Evelyn's face. My mother-in-law sat at the head of my dining table, a seat she claimed the day we moved in, picking at the peach cobbler I'd spent 3 hours baking. It is a traditional Southern recipe, Evelyn. It requires a heavy hand with the sugar. A traditional recipe for diabetes, maybe. Marcus, tell your wife she's trying to kill your mother. I looked at my husband. Marcus sat across from her, loosening his expensive silk tie. He was a handsome man, a successful corporate consultant whose charm could disarm a hostile boardroom in minutes. But in the presence of his mother, he shrank into a shadow of the man I married. Ma is just looking out for our health, baby. Maybe cut back on the sugar next time. I gripped the edge of the granite countertop until my knuckles turned pale. It was always like this. Every Sunday dinner, every holiday, every passing Tuesday. A constant chipping erosion of my sanity. Evelyn had hated me from the moment Marcus introduced us at a jazz club in Midtown 5 years ago. I was too quiet, too independent, too guarded. She wanted a docile daughter-in-law she could mold. Instead, she got me. I will keep that in mind. I turned my back to them, focusing on washing the cast iron skillet. The water ran scalding over my hands, matching the heat in my chest. You know, Marcus, Brenda's daughter just had her 3rd child, a beautiful baby boy. And here you are, 40 years old, and this house is still empty. Ma, please, let us not do this today. I am just saying, Marcus, a man needs a legacy. A house this big on Cascade Road needs children. But some women are just barren, I suppose. The skillet slipped from my hands, clattering violently into the stainless steel sink. Soap suds splashed onto my apron. I squeezed my eyes shut, fighting the immediate sting of tears. She knew where to slip the knife. We had been trying for 2 years. I'm going upstairs. I did not wait for a response. I walked out of the kitchen, leaving my husband sitting there, completely silent, allowing his mother's poison to linger in the air of my home. In our master bedroom, I sat on the edge of the mattress, trembling. I reached for Marcus's iPad on the nightstand to distract myself, opening the web browser to check the weather. Instead, a tab refreshed. It was an email receipt from a luxury jeweler in Buckhead. Thank you for your purchase, Marcus. The 2-carat diamond tennis bracelet will be ready for pickup on Friday. My breath caught in my throat. My birthday was in November. Our anniversary was in March. It was July, and the billing address was not our home on Cascade Road. It was a luxury apartment complex in Sandy Springs, a place we had absolutely no connection to. Chapter 2. The alarm clock buzzed at 0400 hours. The digital red numbers glowed in the pitch-black bedroom. Marcus was snoring softly beside me, completely oblivious to the fact that I had not slept a single minute. The image of that receipt was burned into the back of my eyelids. I slipped out of bed, moving with practiced, silent precision. I took a quick shower, the cold water shocking my exhausted system into high alert. When I walked into my custom walk-in closet, I bypassed the civilian business suits hanging on the right side. I reached to the very back, behind a row of winter coats, and pulled out my uniform. The camouflage pattern felt heavy, familiar, and empowering. I pinned my hair back into a tight regulation bun. I laced up my combat boots. As I looked in the full-length mirror, the invisible broken wife vanished. Staring back at me was Major Maya Jenkins of the United States Army. Marcus thought I was a mid-level logistics coordinator at a freight company near the airport. It was a lie of omission that started early in our relationship. Men like Marcus, men raised by women like Evelyn, did not know how to handle women with actual power. When I saw how insecure he became when I got a minor promotion at my corporate job, I decided to keep my military career a secret. I worked on a secure federal installation, Dobbins Air Reserve Base. It was easy to hide. I grabbed my keys and slipped out of the house before the sun even thought about rising over the Atlanta skyline. The drive up I-285 North was a blur of headlights and morning mist. When I pulled up to the heavily guarded gates of Dobbins, the military police officer snapped a sharp salute. "Good morning, Major." "Morning, Sergeant." Inside my office, I locked the door and booted up my terminal. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a cold, calculated rage. I had security clearances most civilians could not fathom, and a network of intelligence officers who owed me favors. I picked up my desk phone and dialed Captain Miller, a trusted friend in cybersecurity. "Miller, I need a favor. Off the books. Anything for you, Major. What are we looking at? I need you to run a name on a lease at the Azure Apartments in Sandy Springs and check it against my husband's financial records." By noon, the file was sitting in my secure inbox. The apartment was leased to a woman named Jasmine Carter, 26 years old, a former cocktail waitress. Marcus had been paying her rent for 11 months. 11 months of him kissing me on the forehead, eating my food, sleeping in my bed, while bankrolling a mistress across the city. My stomach churned violently. A sudden wave of intense nausea hit me like a physical blow. I rushed to the private bathroom adjoining my office, dropping to my knees just in time to empty my stomach into the toilet. I leaned against the cool tile, wiping my mouth with a paper towel. The nausea was familiar. It was the same wave that had hit me yesterday morning and the morning before that. I drove to a CVS pharmacy on Cobb Parkway during my lunch break. I bought 3 different brands of pregnancy tests. I took them back to the base, locked the bathroom door, and waited the longest 3 minutes of my entire life. One by one, the results materialized. 2 pink lines, a blue cross, the word pregnant. After 2 years of negative tests, after Evelyn's cruel taunts about me being barren, it had finally happened. But as I stared at the plastic wands, there was no joy, only a hollow, terrifying dread. I was pregnant with the child of a man who was living a double life, and when I checked my phone, there was a text message from Marcus. "Ma wants us over for dinner tonight at her place in Buckhead. Don't be late, and please, just be nice to her today." Chapter 3. Evelyn's house in Buckhead was an opulent, pretentious display of wealth she did not actually possess. I knew for a fact Marcus was secretly paying her property taxes, another betrayal I had discovered during my morning investigation. I parked my SUV in the circular driveway. I had changed into a conservative navy blue wrap dress, my military uniform locked safely in the trunk. I took a deep breath, placing a hand over my still flat stomach. I was going to tell him. Despite the mistress, despite the lies, he was the father. We had to sit down, like adults, and figure this out. I pushed open the heavy mahogany front door. The house was unnervingly quiet. "Marcus." I walked into the grand living room. The scene before me stopped the blood in my veins. Marcus was sitting on the white leather sofa. Beside him sat a young woman with long, perfectly styled hair, wearing designer clothes I instantly recognized as the ones Marcus had purchased. Jasmine. She was resting her hand intimately on his knee. Standing behind them, pouring a glass of expensive red wine, was Evelyn. She wore a smile of absolute venomous triumph. "What is going on here?" My voice was terrifyingly calm. Marcus stood up, looking at the floor, unable to meet my eyes. "Maya, we need to talk. Oh, let me save my son the trouble of stuttering through this." Evelyn stepped forward, swirling the wine in her glass. "Marcus is done pretending, Maya. He has found a real woman, someone who understands his needs. Jasmine is moving into the Cascade Road house this weekend." I stared at Marcus, waiting for him to object, to tell his mother she was insane, but he just stood there, a pathetic coward. "You are moving your mistress into my house." "It is not your house, Maya." Evelyn reached over to the glass coffee table and picked up a manila folder. She tossed it onto the floor at my feet. "I had my lawyers look into the deed. You trusted Marcus to handle the paperwork when you closed on that property. He put the deed in his name, and a month ago, he transferred ownership to a trust that I control. You own nothing." The betrayal was so deep, so profoundly layered, that I could not even process the legalities of it. I looked at the man I had shared my life with, the man whose child was currently growing inside me. "Marcus, is this true? You are throwing me out? For her?" "I'm sorry, Maya. I'm not happy. Jasmine makes me feel alive. You are always so distant, so cold. I want your keys, Maya." Evelyn held out her manicured hand. "Now. I have clothes there. My life is there. We packed your bags this afternoon while you were at your little warehouse job." Jasmine spoke up, her voice sickeningly sweet. "They are on the front porch, Maya. The locks have already been changed." I looked at the three of them. A cowardly husband, a hateful mother-in-law, and a foolish mistress. I felt the overwhelming urge to scream, to reveal my pregnancy, to tear the room apart. But the discipline of the United States Army kicked in. You do not show the enemy your hand when you are surrounded. I reached into my purse, pulled out my house key, and dropped it onto the hardwood floor. It landed with a sharp clink. "You will regret this, Marcus." I turned around and walked out of the house. By the time I reached my car, the Georgia sky had opened up, unleashing a torrential, violent thunderstorm. I drove to Cascade Road, the rain blinding my windshield. Sure enough, 3 cheap garbage bags filled with my clothes were sitting on the wet porch. I was locked out, homeless, and pregnant in the middle of a summer storm. Chapter 4. I spent the first night parked in the very back of a 24-hour Walmart parking lot on Howell Mill Road. The rain hammered against the roof of my SUV all night. I reclined the driver's seat, wrapped in a fleece blanket I kept in the trunk, staring up at the sunroof. I could have called a hotel. I had plenty of money in my private accounts. But I needed this. I needed to feel the absolute bottom, to let the shock of the betrayal burn away everything soft inside me. By the time the sun breached the horizon, casting a miserable gray light over the asphalt, the weeping wife was dead. The major was in command. I drove to a local gym, showered, and put on my uniform. When I arrived at Dobbins Air Reserve Base, I walked with a posture so rigid that lower enlisted airmen scrambled out of my way to salute. I walked straight into the office of Colonel Hayes, the base judge advocate general. He was a silver-haired military lawyer who had served 2 tours in Afghanistan. He looked up from his desk, surprised by my unannounced entry. "Major Jenkins, close the door. You look like you are ready to start a war." "I am, sir. I need a referral. I need the most ruthless civilian divorce attorney in Atlanta, someone who does not play fair." Colonel Hayes leaned back in his chair, studying my face. He did not ask questions. He reached into his drawer and handed me a matte black business card. "Diane Vance. Her office is in Midtown. She is a shark in a tailored suit. Tell her I sent you." I took the card. "Thank you, sir." "Take a few days of administrative leave, Maya. Get your theater of operations in order." By 2 o'clock that afternoon, I was sitting in a high-rise office building on Peachtree Street. Diane Vance sat across from me. She was in her 50s, sharp-eyed, and aggressively attentive. I laid out everything: the fake deed transfer, the mistress, Evelyn's involvement, and my secret military career. He thinks you are a logistics clerk making $40,000 a year. Diane smiled, a predatory gleam in her eyes. Yes, and the house on Cascade Road? I paid the entire down payment from an inheritance my grandmother left me before we got married. I have the bank records. His transfer of the deed to his mother's trust is textbook marital fraud. Oh, this is going to be fun. Diane began typing furiously on her laptop. We are going to freeze his assets, all of them, but we need to act quietly. We let him think he has the upper hand. We let him file first. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from an unknown number. I opened it. It was a photo of Jasmine standing in my kitchen on Cascade Road, wearing my favorite silk robe, holding a mug that said "Wifey." The caption beneath it read, "Thanks for keeping the house warm for me." I showed the phone to Diane. Her smile vanished, replaced by a cold professional anger. "I'm going to destroy them for you, Maya." "No." I put my phone back in my pocket, my voice steady. "We are going to destroy them. And Diane, there is one more thing. I am pregnant." Diane stopped typing. She looked at me, a profound sadness flickering in her eyes before the shark returned. "Does he know?" "No. And he will not know until it is too late to claim any rights to my child. Then we build a fortress around you, Major." As I left her office, the summer heat felt less oppressive. It felt like fuel. I was going to burn Marcus's world to ash. Chapter 5. For the next 2 months, I lived in a comfortable, discreet corporate apartment in Vinings. I continued my work at the base, throwing myself into a massive logistics operation that kept my mind sharp. My body was changing. The morning sickness faded, replaced by a slight swell in my abdomen that I easily hid beneath my loose-fitting uniform jackets. Marcus had completely blocked my number, communicating only through his mother. It was exactly what Diane and I wanted. We wanted them arrogant. We wanted them sloppy. It started on a Tuesday in late September. Marcus filed for divorce. The courier served me the papers at my fake logistics job, a small warehouse office I had set up just for this charade, paying the manager to accept my mail. I sat in Diane's office reading over his demands. It was a masterpiece of audacity. "He is requesting permanent spousal support." Diane laughed, a dry, incredulous sound. "Yes, he claims in the filing that he was the primary breadwinner and that his lifestyle would be severely impacted by the divorce. He is also claiming full ownership of the Cascade Roadhouse, arguing that your initial down payment was a gift to the marriage, which he then legally transferred to his mother to protect his investments. He is broke, isn't he?" "Completely." Diane turned her monitor toward me. My forensic accountant tore through his records. Marcus is heavily in debt. He took out massive personal loans to maintain that lifestyle. Evelyn's house in Buckhead? It is facing foreclosure. He has been draining his corporate consulting salary to pay her mortgages and fund Jasmine's shopping sprees. The only asset with actual equity is the Cascade Roadhouse, which he stole from you. So, he needs my supposed poverty to manipulate the court into awarding him alimony, hoping he can squeeze blood from a stone. Exactly. He thinks you will default, or settle for nothing just to get away from him. When is the deposition? Next Friday, Fulton County Courthouse. We meet in the arbitration room. I looked down at my stomach, placing a gentle hand over it. My child gave a tiny, almost imperceptible flutter, a reminder of what I was fighting for. "Diane, I want to drop the hammer. All of it." "Are you sure? Once we play the military card, the federal government gets involved. Defrauding a commissioned officer involves federal penalties." I want him to look into my eyes when he realizes he lost everything. The night before the deposition, I drove past the Cascade Roadhouse. The lights were on. I could see the silhouette of Marcus and Jasmine laughing in the living room. My chest tightened, a phantom pain of the life I thought I had. But the grief was fleeting, washed away by the cold reality of his betrayal. I did not shed a single tear. I put the SUV in drive and headed back to Vinings. I had to polish my boots. I had a war to win tomorrow. Chapter 6. The arbitration room in the Fulton County Courthouse was sterile, smelling faintly of lemon polish and old paper. The massive oak table in the center of the room felt like a battlefield. I arrived early with Diane. I was wearing my Class A Army dress uniform. The dark blue fabric was immaculate. The gold buttons gleamed. On my shoulders rested the gold oak leaves of a major. My chest bore ribbons of commendation from a decade of honorable service. I sat with perfect, rigid posture, my hands folded on the table. At exactly 9 a.m., the heavy wooden door swung open. Marcus walked in, wearing a sharp, custom-tailored Italian suit, exuding an air of arrogant confidence. Right behind him was Evelyn, dressed in a designer pantsuit, clutching a Chanel handbag. Jasmine had apparently stayed home. They were so busy talking to their sleazy, discount attorney that they did not look at me immediately. They sat down across the table. Marcus pulled out a chair for his mother. "All right, let us get this over with. I have a tea time at 11. Marcus casually glanced across the table. His eyes locked onto me. The color drained from his face so fast I thought he was going to pass out. His jaw went completely slack. He stared at the uniform, at the medals, at the gold oak leaves on my shoulders. What kind of costume is this, Maya?" His voice was a breathless, terrified whisper. Evelyn squinted, her arrogance faltering for a fraction of a second before she sneered. "Is this a joke? Did you rent a Halloween costume to try and intimidate us?" Diane Vance steepled her fingers, leaning forward with a terrifying smile. "Let the record show that the respondent, Major Maya Jenkins of the United States Army, is present." Marcus's lawyer, a sweaty man named Higgins, looked at his paperwork, then at me, and began to panic. "Major?" my client stated. His wife was an entry-level clerk. "Your client is a liar, Mr. Higgins." Diane slid a thick bound dossier across the table. "Major Jenkins is a senior logistics officer stationed at Dobbins Air Reserve Base. She possesses a federal security clearance and earns a salary more than triple what your client makes, considering his recently uncovered catastrophic debts." Marcus gripped the edge of the table. "You lied to me? For 5 years? I protected myself from a man who was threatened by my shadow." I spoke for the first time. My voice echoed off the walls, cold and authoritative. "You want to talk about lies, Marcus? Let us talk about Jasmine. Let us talk about the $50,000 in marital assets you secretly transferred to a mistress. Let us talk about the fraudulent deed transfer of my home on Cascade Road." Higgins frantically flipped through the dossier. He stopped on a page, his eyes bulging. "Marcus, did you transfer the deed to your mother's trust without your wife's signature? It was my house. I am the man of the family. You forged her signature on a secondary notary document, Mr. Higgins." Diane's voice was like ice. "That is a felony. Furthermore, by attempting to defraud a commissioned military officer out of her primary residence, your client has drawn the attention of the Judge Advocate General's office. The federal government is currently freezing all of his bank accounts, as well as the accounts of his mother, Evelyn." Evelyn dropped her Chanel bag. It hit the floor with a heavy thud. "You cannot do that. That is my money." "It was never your money, Evelyn. You are bankrupt, and your son is going to federal prison." I looked directly into Marcus's eyes. The handsome, charming facade had completely melted away, leaving only a terrified, pathetic little boy. "I want my house vacated by midnight tonight, or I will have the military police assist the county sheriff in removing your mistress by force." Higgins packed up his briefcase, looking disgusted. "I cannot represent you in federal fraud charges, Marcus. You are on your own." Higgins walked out of the room. Evelyn began to hyperventilate, clutching her chest. Marcus just stared at me, his life completely dismantled in less than 10 minutes. The silence in the room was absolute. broken only by the sound of my gold buttons shifting as I stood up, victorious. Chapter 7. The fallout was biblical. By midnight that same Friday, Jasmine had packed all her belongings into her Honda Civic and vanished. When she realized Marcus's accounts were frozen and the credit cards were declining, her love for him evaporated instantly. I moved back into the Cascade Roadhouse the following Monday. The place smelled of Jasmine's cheap perfume. I hired a professional cleaning crew to scrub the house from top to bottom, threw away the living room furniture, and ordered new pieces. I reclaimed my sanctuary. Marcus's life unraveled with terrifying speed. Without the fraudulent funds, Evelyn's house in Buckhead went into immediate foreclosure. She was forced to move into a tiny, rundown apartment in College Park. The stress aged her a decade in a month. Marcus was indicted on federal fraud and forgery charges. He lost his consulting job. He was a ghost of the man I had married. It was a crispy November afternoon when he finally tracked me down. I was sitting outside a quiet coffee shop in Virginia Highland, sipping a decaf herbal tea. I was wearing a thick beige trench coat, enjoying the changing autumn leaves. Maya. I looked up. Marcus stood on the sidewalk. He looked awful. His designer suit was wrinkled. He had not shaved in days, and there were deep, dark bags under his eyes. "You are not supposed to be here, Marcus. Please, just give me 5 minutes. I have nothing, Maya. My mother will not even speak to me because she blames me for losing her house. Jasmine blocked my number. I'm facing 3 years in a federal penitentiary." He fell to his knees right there on the sidewalk. Passers-by stared, but I felt absolutely nothing. No pity, no anger, just a profound emptiness. "I was so stupid. I was so threatened by you, Maya. My mother got into my head, telling me I needed to be the king of my castle, telling me you did not respect me. I ruined my life. Please, call off the federal lawyers. For the sake of the love we used to have." I slowly stood up from my chair. As I stood, the trench coat parted slightly. I was 6 months pregnant. The swell of my belly was unmistakable. Marcus's eyes dropped to my stomach. The realization hit him with the force of a freight train. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He reached a trembling hand toward me. "Maya, are we?" "No." I stepped back, out of his reach. "This is my child, not yours." I reached into my purse and pulled out a folded legal document. I dropped it onto the sidewalk in front of his knees. "What is this?" he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "It is a permanent restraining order, signed by a federal judge. It strips you of all parental rights based on your felony fraud charges and documented financial abuse. You will never see me again. You will never meet this child. If you come within 500 feet of me, my home, or the base, you will be arrested on sight. Maya, please. He is my baby." "Goodbye, Marcus." I turned and walked to my SUV. I did not look back, even as his agonized sobs echoed down the peaceful Virginia Highland street. The cold autumn wind hit my face, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely free. Chapter 8. The baby shower was loud, chaotic, and filled with genuine love. We held it in the backyard of the Cascade Roadhouse, under the shade of the ancient oak trees. String lights hung from the branches, and a massive barbecue smoker was churning out ribs and brisket. The yard was filled with my real family. Colonel Hayes was holding court near the drinks table, telling exaggerated war stories to Captain Miller and Diane Vance. Half of my logistics squadron was there, laughing and celebrating. I sat in a wicker chair, holding a plate of potato salad, rubbing my swollen belly. I was 9 months pregnant, a little girl. I was going to name her Eden, because she represented a new beginning. "You look glowing, Maya." Diane walked over, handing me a glass of sparkling cider. "I feel heavy, but I feel good. I got an update from the federal prosecutor this morning." Diane took a sip of her drink, keeping her voice low. Marcus took the plea deal. 3 years at the Federal Correctional Institution in Jessup. Evelyn tried to file a civil suit against you for emotional distress, but the judge threw it out with prejudice. They are done. Completely erased from your orbit. Good. I looked out at my beautiful home, at the friends who respected and protected me. I was recently promoted to lieutenant colonel. I had wealth, health, and a daughter on the way. The mailman dropped this off earlier. It got mixed in with the baby gifts. Diane pulled a crumpled, standard-issue prison envelope from her pocket. The return address read F.C.I. Jessup. The handwriting was Marcus's, desperate, frantic scrawls. I took the envelope from her hand. I stared at his name. A year ago, a letter from him would have dictated my mood, my actions, my worth. Now it was just a piece of trash. "Do you want me to throw it away?" Diane asked gently. "No, I will handle it." I stood up slowly, navigating the weight of my daughter, and walked over to the patio heater, where a small fire was burning in the fire pit to keep the evening chill away. I did not open the envelope. I did not care about his apologies, his regrets, or his excuses. I tossed the letter directly into the center of the flames. I watched the paper curl, turn black, and disintegrate into ash, floating up into the dark Atlanta sky. I rested both hands on my stomach, feeling Eden kick strongly against my palms. I smiled, stepping away from the fire and back into the light of my beautiful, hard-won life, finally visible and utterly unbreakable. Thank you for watching. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. We would love to know what you think.